So I'm Lolly Bowean. I am with the Field Foundation, longtime storyteller and reporter here in Chicago, and I was asked to help conduct this conversation. As you can you guys hear me okay? All right, just bear with me, bear with us, right? So I'm just going to take a moment, first of all, to thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to not only watch this film, but to engage with us today. We realize that you could be anywhere. We also recognize that at this moment, particularly in Chicago, that a lot of people are mourning and hurting. So before we get started, I just want to give a 5-second moment of silence just to kind of clear the space and give everybody that room to take a deep breath, pause, and be able to kind of tune in to what we're about to hear today. All right, thank you. So first, let me just take a moment and introduce our very distinguished and beautiful panelists, this group of activated Black women who have been fighting for the future of a better Chicago. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give an introduction and ask a question to you all. And we want this to be very informal. We want it to be conversational. So please don't feel shy. If you have questions, there's going to be room and space for you to learn from them and from them to learn from you. First, let me introduce Deborah Payne. So nice to meet you, Deborah. Deborah is a longtime activist, Inglewood resident, who first catapulted to national and international acclaim for her fight against Northern Southern Railway, an organization that was buying up property very cheaply in Inglewood, displacing African American families and forcing them out very unfairly. And her journey was chronicled in a documentary film similar to the one that you just watched called The Area. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Taylor Norwood. Taylor is an organizer and activist with Good Kids, Mad City. She has led campaigns to defund the police and increase investment in Chicago's Black and brown communities.
Do not play with her, period.
Period, right? She has spoken nationally about ways that we can really attack gun violence and pushed for justice for George Floyd and other Black victims who've been murdered by police. Welcome, Taylor. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Next, we have Bella Boz, who I consider an MC, a poet, an activist, and a prison abolitionist. We heard and watched her story in Unapologetic. Welcome, Bella. And then we have Fannie Rushing, who was born in Chicago, grew up in Hyde Park, and became a volunteer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. She became deeply involved in the civil rights movement, and this woman risked her life fighting white supremacists for us to get the right to vote and to register Black and brown people to vote. Please welcome Fannie. Well, first, to get us started and just kind of get the conversation rolling, I was hoping to start with Fannie to talk to us, and each of you, to talk to us about what was the first thing that activated you. What moved you from just being a resident in Hyde Park, or for you, Bella, a resident on the West Side, and Deborah, a resident in Inglewood. What moved you from just being a regular citizen sitting at the table to actually being activated into the front lines of the movement?
For me, it was definitely the Montgomery Bus Boycott. I'm fully vaccinated, so I'm going to take this off for just a minute. It was seeing those brave women and men in Montgomery walking as domestic workers, because most of them were, day by day until they broke the back of segregation. And my father used to say to me, that's what Black people can do when they stick together. And then when I saw the 4 young men sit in at Greensboro, North Carolina, I knew I had to be a part of that. I thought I had to do it in a hurry because I thought it would all be over soon. I didn't know I'd be 3,000 years old.
What about you, Bello? What activated you?
I was activated my whole life. I just didn't know it until, for me, it was Trayvon Martin. For me, it was Trayvon Martin. It was an undeniable moment for young Black people in this city particularly, but I think across the nation. And what I mean when I say I was already activated, I didn't know it, was that it was when I came into movement space that I could begin to see myself as a leader, an activist, an organizer, right? But I was already doing all of those things anyway. Just no one was calling it that. I said in a film, it's new, this idea of this being work. I didn't know that. It was just life, But I came up in a time where I am a part of the most educated group of Black women in the history of this nation. So just the access that we have to language, to understanding, to politics, just the access that we have to education and to really being able to place ourselves in the world, and see it from our own perspective, but understand how we got there, right? Like I was just very privileged to be a part of this movement, and to see it firsthand, and then find my place within it. So again, like I always knew prisons were not justice. You took my parents from me when I was a baby. I always knew that. I always advocated against the police, but I didn't know saying fuck the police was advocacy. I didn't know that was activism until it was a space created for me to see it in that way. But yeah, I think I learned organizing first. I said this in a film too, from gang members, from people who were organizing in a community in a way that's very different than what you see on the film, but also not very different at all. Maybe less respected, less credible, but in a lot of ways sometimes more efficient, more effective. But yeah, it was the moment of Trayvon Martin, and then right after Trayvon Martin, we had Mike Brown. We had so many back to back to back that it was undeniable. It was undeniable. But what moved me to really go out into the streets, I promise, and I have to be honest about this every single time for everyone who looks to me, or it was not those individuals that moved me to the streets. It was not those certain instances. It was that I was already depressed. It was that everything else that was going on in my life, I needed somewhere to be. I needed somewhere to take my anger. Anger felt so much better than depression. Depression, I couldn't do nothing with. I couldn't get out the bed. I could do nothing with that. Anger, I could go out to the streets. I could make something happen. I could at least yell at somebody. Depression, my grandmother had just passed. Everything you see on this film, I was depressed. Everything you see on there. My grandmother had just passed. My grandmother raised me when both of my parents were in prison. That was my mother, my father, my everything. My grandmother had just passed when we started filming this. I was out in the streets because I was broken. And I found a community that felt like a healing space. And again, it was really because I was angry. Anger just felt so much better than depression. I'm telling you, I'm going to keep saying that for anybody who feeling that right now. Like, you just stuck. You don't know what to do. Like, climb for something better. Once you get to anger, you could get to something better than that. Once you get there, you could say, okay, this ain't right. I'm angry because this isn't right. What can I do? All right, you just got to keep climbing till you get to something better. So, Yeah, what brought me to the streets was my grandmother had just passed.
Mm.
I needed, so her name is Fannie.
Yeah, well,
I needed somewhere to go.
well, we're thankful for Fanny. They say depression is concentrating so much on the past. And so it sounds like you were able to look at your past and then channel that energy into something productive to change the future. What about you, Taylor? What activated you? What was the moment that you decided that you couldn't sit still any longer?
I think that's a really hard question. I think especially being like a younger voice in such a strange time for the movement for Black Lives is like a lot to carry. 'Cause like not only are I think even from like a young age before we even could understand what like activism or advocating or articulating what was going wrong at home or what was going wrong in your neighborhood was you saw it around you. So I remember as like young as sixth grade and schools are getting closed down and like I'm from the South, predominantly from a black neighborhood. I'm from South Shore, so luckily I was able to get into like Murray Language Academy, which was already like a statement for a young black kid in the early 2000s. Like I was learning French in kindergarten, which is not something that I could like take back home with me to my neighborhood. And so when you're in sixth grade and the peers from your neighborhood are not the peers that you go to school with, but also the peers that from your neighborhood are going through a lot more than the kids that you're going to school with. Really gave me a sense of my identity as a black girl. And so I think moving forward from that, also having a mother that worked for CPS, so not only just seeing the effects of the kids in the neighborhood, but hearing how the teachers now didn't have jobs and different things like that was quite alarming because you never really understand like all of that is intentional. All of that is intentional. So I think growing up, it was kind of always like a why us kind of thing. And then in the same space, now there are black bodies being mass murdered all over the nation and nobody's doing about it, not anything about it. We're not allowed to talk about it. And so I think that is a lot of where my work and the youth work comes from now. All of those questions that nobody answered while we were kids is now showing up in our lives as adults, as growing adults. And so I would say growing up in this city made me get activated. Seeing the difference from catching the 15 in Hyde Park, then riding through um, Hyde Park down Lake Park, then getting on Stony Island, and that whole area looking completely different from where I just came from. I think more needs to be talked about to the youth now. I think Bella made a great statement in the film that like we are holding a lot of the accountability on our elders because those conversations weren't being had with us. We're not learning what it means to be black from our parents. A lot of those kids, because their parents are going through all these other different struggles that nobody's talking about, but also learning what it means to be black because the world keeps showing us what being black means. Mm-hmm. And that is that we don't matter and that our education doesn't matter and our health doesn't matter and our families don't matter. And so it's hard to sit still in moments like those. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and so you were confronting dual realities every day of your life.
Yeah.
Seeing the inequity right up personal and right up front and close, and that activated you. What about you, Deborah? You're a longtime Inglewood resident, homeowner. I imagine had some very happy, wonderful times in Inglewood. What moved you from your kitchen table to being a activist on the front lines?
I think I think like Bella, I never pinned a title on myself as an activist or doing advocacy work. I'm 70 years old. I was raised in in public housing. My mom was always a neighborhood worker, and that's what we call them, community workers, neighborhood workers. I've always loved people. I've always was led to embrace people that could not speak up for themselves, or somebody a little less fortunate. My brother was mentally retarded. We lived in the project all of his life. So after I got grown and on my own and raising my children, I took along the neighborhood worker, the community worker, like with my mother. What got me started with knowing that I was an advocate, when people started calling me that, was during the time Norfolk Southern taking over our properties. My whole thing, what activated me was respect. I don't want to be disrespected. I don't want you thinking that I'm stupid, that I'm dumb, I'm a woman, and I'm not going to speak up. It wasn't right what they were doing. I needed explanation. I need them to take the time that I needed to explain to me what the hell you're trying to do to my community. At that time, I started knowing about advocacy, community, and all that. Well, like you and all of us was told that we can't and you don't, meant to me, you can and I will. And I did, and I still will. Come on. If the time comes. So when they told me that I couldn't, my thing was the fight was on. And the ones that couldn't talk and the ones that were afraid was the doors that I knocked on and told them sometimes, shut up, I'll talk for you. Yes, I was mad. I was mad because they told me that I can't and that they would. I shed the tears, but it made me stronger. It made me stronger. It made me angrier. But it made me get the heck up every day and fight the good fight. Because one of the things you were going to do was respect me. You tell me 190 days. It took my old butt 6 years to understand. And that's how long they had to wait. And right today, I'm glad that I did.
Thank you, Miss Deborah. So I know, Miss Fannie, you have to leave in a few minutes, so we don't have much time with you, but I want to kind of turn the spotlight back to you so that we can absorb as much wisdom as possible while you're here. And I have so many questions, but one of the things that Miss Deborah talked about is reluctant leadership, coming out from the shell and standing in the front to speak for people, even when you don't necessarily feel brave or courageous enough to do it. And so I want you to talk a little bit about how you were able to overcome any sort of barrier that you had. And I also wanted to get you to respond, as Taylor brought up, to what Bella mentioned in this film, that there were lessons that needed to be learned by this younger generation, and whether you feel that those lessons got passed on, or if they didn't, why not?
Excuse me. Well, I would say, as Miss Baker told us, this is your time. This is your movement. I can't tell you how to do your movement. I can only learn and be glad that young people are out there carrying on this tradition. I can't tell you how proud it makes me to see the opening scenes in Unapologetic. I've seen the film twice, and that opening scene where people are so unapologetic for the fact that they have to protest, for the fact that they are able to resist. I can rest easy because I know that young people are carrying on this movement. And of course, we're told that we don't have history. We're told that we don't have importance, but we certainly know that is not true. The organization that I work for, the Chicago SNCC History Project, is determined to preserve our history so that young people understand the kind of legacy that they are inheriting. They aren't inheriting despair. They aren't inheriting poverty. They have the ability to make change. There is another scene that is very important, and that is the fact that what we enjoy today as democracy is something that has been struggled for by black people, by indigenous people for the last 500 years. If we hadn't been strong, we wouldn't still be here. So we don't have to worry about the future so long as you have these wonderful young people who are willing to risk their lives and their comfort to make a better world. So my role at this point is just to be an ally, not to tell people how to organize, because you're organizing in very different times than the times that I organized. I'd simply ask people to remember that when you talk about the inadequacies of the older generation, and we talked about the inadequacies of our older generation as well. That's part of being young. But I'd ask you to remember that there are people in prison today, like H. Rap Brown, Jamil El-Amin, who spent the last 40 years in prison. The last 40 years in prison, most of it until 5 years ago, in solitary confinement. In solitary confinement, the UN says that is cruel and unusual punishment. Not only 40 years in solitary confinement, most of it below ground, 6 feet below ground. But he is still strong today, still struggling today. And in part, he can do that because he knows on the outside that this movement is still going on.
Thank you. Miss Fannie, again, before you depart, if you could comment too, a lot of the conversation in the film touched upon black female leadership. And I know you came up through a time when it was important that black males have the mic and the spotlight. Can you respond to this new movement and this new energy that has really given the light toward the people who are doing a lot of the groundwork, the grassroots work, which are black women?
Okay, well, that's pretty much the colonizers' model of the world. When I was coming up, black women were leading the movement. Black women were doing the day-to-day work. My goodness, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Septima Clark, so many women, names you don't even know. They did the day-to-day work. Those women struggled understanding what it meant to challenge white supremacy. And they were prepared to give their very lives in order that this country live up to what it says it is. Even at the moment when those black men were at the mic, they were being challenged. And certainly in SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, this is the genesis of the contemporary women's movement. It is where Donna Richards began to first talk about the fact that no, it's not a male movement. It is a movement of black people. And as they say, women hold up half the sky. There's a very important line that Dolores Huerta says in The Salt of the Earth. How can you oppress me in the same way that whites oppress you? So the struggle for civil rights, the struggle for human rights, is something that we struggle for as men and as women. And there has never been a time when women, particularly black women, were not in a day-to-day struggle. I mean, how on earth would we still be here if it hadn't been for black women bearing these children under the most extraordinary circumstances imaginable? So I don't know of a time when, even when those folks were at the mic claiming space, that there weren't black women saying, move over, move over. Okay.
Thank you. Bella, I'm going to pull you in because one of the things Miss Fannie talked about or just said is black women were having children under very extreme circumstances. And you are a product, as we learned from the film, of those types of circumstances. Talk to us about how you overcome the stigma and put your body on the line in order to fight for absolute freedom for black people.
Ooh, how I overcome the stigma, baby. I think it goes back to what Miss Deborah was saying. You gonna respect me. You gonna respect me. Like, I done been through too much. I'm this young and I done been through too much. You gonna have to respect that. You don't gotta like it. You don't gotta love me. But you gonna respect me. You gonna hear me. You gonna hear me. If I gotta yell, if I gotta lose my voice, you gonna hear me. Because you ain't heard this before.
All right.
You think you know so much, but you ain't never even heard this before. You ain't never even considered my perspective before. So how could you... The putting the body on the line part, though, again, that came out of depression. That didn't come out of me being a good Samaritan. That didn't come out of... That came out of depression. That came out of... I almost don't care right now. I almost do not care right now. The fact that I look at that and I promise y'all I have a very different reaction seeing my body on the line like that. Like, y'all see power, y'all want to hug me, y'all want to thank me, I'm looking like, I'm so proud that you're not in that space no more.
Right.
I'm so proud of you. When somebody shows you who they are, right? Like the scene in a movie when a police officer threatened me. I know exactly who you are, right? I know that you will kill me. I know that's who you are. And you will feel good about it. You will feel justified about it. And for me to still go toe-to-toe with him in that moment, y'all, I am so grateful for community. I am so grateful for community. Like, I feel like I really want to pass that question to you, Taylor, because I'm not there no more. I'm not there no more. I'm not. She there. She at these protests every single day now. I'm not. I just went to 2 memorials this week. I just came from a memorial right now. Both our comrades in this film. Both. So, overcoming the stigma, baby. I know one thing. I'm more than a statistic. I'm more than a number. I know that much. I know it's so many people. Y'all, this film is so much bigger than me and Janae. It's so many people who made this possible. right? Like Ashley had the vision to say, let me pull out two stories in the midst of this huge story. Let me zoom in on these two women. But that's a big story. That's a big community. It's so much bigger than me. It's so many organizers. It's so many people who were in strategy meetings, who planned the protest, who planned the actions that I just get to show up to. Right? So I don't know that we have overcome anything just yet. But I think it's just the knowing. Like we know that we are not what they tell us we are. We know that. We know that we are so much more than that, and that's really how the film happens, how this moment where defund the police is a national conversation happens, where abolition is a national conversation, international conversation. It comes from us knowing that all the stereotypes, all the stigma, we so much bigger than that. We so much more than that. And we only live the way we live, exist in the world the way we exist in the world because of the conditions that we were born into. We know that we fighting conditions that existed way before we got here. Way before we got here. And it's that knowing. It's that knowing, I think, is the overcoming itself. It's that rejection of what they tell us that we are. And fighting to be seen for who we really are. So
Yes, we know we are more than what the oppressor has told us we are. We know that we deserve better, and we demand better. Miss Deborah, jump in here. Talk to us about your demands for better. And in your fight in Inglewood, what represented victory for you? What did success look like for you and your neighbors as you went against this billionaire company that wanted to come in and take what they wanted for very little?
Success looked to me like they found out who I was and that I wasn't going to back down. Success looked like another day to try something another way. Success felt like when you have a song in your mind, and even in my film, I said this little thing by Marvin Gaye, who really cares? Who is willing to try to save the world that is destined to die? It's people like us that's willing to try, that feel like today is another chance to do something better. I felt better when they would say, I don't know her. When the railroad people would say, I don't know her because she always looks so different. She has so many different kinds of hair and stuff. We don't know her. And I stood up and I said, you don't know me because you never looked in my face. I don't care how many wigs and stuff you have. If you look at my face and you hear my voice and you feel my heart, you know who I am. They would say, the only way we know her when we see that white man walking with her. Thank God for the white man walking with me because they knew here come Deborah Payne. I wanted to say to you, after the first time that you saw your film, I'm taking it out. Okay. When you saw the film, did you see you, or you was like, wow, look at that. I remember that. It seemed like, how did I do all this? How could I be in all of these many places? That's what I did. The first time I saw the film, I never saw something so professional and with me in it in the first place. And in a part of the film, I had actually had a stroke. And I'm sitting there looking, and I was like, oh, man, she died. And I'm like, she ain't died, that's me. she didn't die. That was me. And then I started thinking spiritual. I remember this poem called The Footprints in the Sand. And the man at the end said, well, where were you when I was going through all of this? I got a chance to see him carrying me. because that strength came from within. That strength came from God meant that it's supposed to be done, and you're supposed to do it. And today I'm proud that I did it, and I'm proud that I was selected to make, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of you young folks that stand up. I came along at a time when women need to be quiet and don't say things. And yes, men had the mic, but women were always stronger because you told that man what to say.
Period.
Hey, you're going to do this. I don't care what you do. You're going to do this. And he listened, you know. So it was always a strong woman in the background. So I wanted to say, just ask you how you felt when you first saw the film.
Wow. How I felt when I first saw the film. Every time I see the film, I feel called. I feel called. I feel reminded of that calling.
Good.
Yeah, I know, I realize it's me I'm looking at. And I realize how much bigger than me it is at the same time. I feel grateful to be a vessel through which stories like mine are told. Because again, I see me, but I see my nieces, I see my community, I see the west side of Chicago in a way I never see the west side of Chicago on screen. And I know it's so many stories that deserve to be told, and unfortunately, all those stories will not be told. But I feel grateful that I know a little girl from the west side of Chicago will see this film and feel seen. You know?
Yes.
We had a screening. We had a community screening on the west side last week. Y'all, this been the longest week of my life. Oh my God. we had a screening last Sunday, was it? And it was out west, and I sat in a row full of children. A row full of children from the west side. And they kept calling me a celebrity. Right. That was my whole purpose of being there was for them. Like, I realized that in that moment. Like, okay, God. Like, okay. But yeah, they kept calling me a celebrity. Anybody they talk to, they'll be like, yeah, we with Bella. You know, like, what that felt like something for them because they saw themselves.
That's right.
And as they called me a celebrity, but you know, as much as I explained to them, like, no, I'm just like you. I'm just like you. But that felt so good to them to say, like, well, that means I could be a celebrity. You know. And really it was like, forget what you saying. You a celebrity. You a celebrity, and you like me. And you sitting here and playing with me all day, and you buying me stuff from the candy lady. So I got a celebrity friend. I know a celebrity, and what that, you know, to me, I'm just like, y'all, baby, bye. But for them, that meant so much to them, so I can't, you know, I gotta thank God for that. I gotta thank God for that.
Because you created something for them.
You know, so, yeah, and they would have been in that park anyway, had we been there showing a movie or not. They would have been right there playing. They would have been, you know, they would have had their day. So just the power of how God will use you to impact someone else's life. You know, when you feel like your own life not doing what it's supposed to do, or maybe you're not living it, baby, bad. God will, God will remind you, like, it's bigger than you. It's bigger than just your life. It's the lives looking at you. You know, I'm using you. I'm using you. So when I see this film, that's what I'm reminded God is using me.
And by showing that film to those young people and sharing your story with them, then they get empowered from seeing your story. Taylor, in the film, Bella says that even if we don't, our stories will make it. Like Bella and Miss Deborah, you've had your story chronicled in the newspaper and you've become a figure that we see on TV screens. Can you talk to us about the importance of having these stories, particularly of Black women activists, chronicled, seeing them on the front, and what that means for you, what it means for our community, what it means for our people? And I also want you to kind of go back to what Bella had asked you and bring that into the conversation too, about putting your body on the line and the courage that it takes. How do you find that courage? How do you find that within you to actually go out there knowing, as Bella pointed out in the film, that you can't carry a gun, that you can't carry a weapon, that all you have is your body?
I think that's a loaded question. I kind of think they go hand in hand. Doing this work, is definitely very taxing. So it's very it's often very unnoticed work that gets done. I remember when we first started Good Kids Mad City, or I had first started going out with my friends and going to protests, and kind of starting to establish myself as somebody who was committed to elevating myself and elevating my community. A lot of people didn't take it serious. Within my household, within my peer group, just plenty of spaces. There are still spaces, that organizing spaces, that I go to, just because I am a Black youth and a Black woman, that my voice is immediately invalidated or ignored. And so I think the importance of documenting the work that these Black women are doing is validating us. This is a linear journey. Our growth is, I don't think it's exponential. I think we are constantly on this path. And a lot of times it's hard to look back and see the greater good because it's followed by so much bad. And so I think trying to outshine a world or a stereotype that we are less than, that we will not prosper, we will not grow, we will not be successful, it's very hard when nobody is acknowledging the things that you are doing. And for Black women, our voices have been erased from so many different movements and so many different pivotal times in history, that we carried Black and brown people as a unit, on our backs, in our wombs, in our minds, or in our voices. There are so many times where we've put in the groundwork, the foundational work, that, like she just said, was overshadowed by the voice of a man. So it didn't matter how many mothers stayed up and how many babies they had to raise and get to school and get dressed and get fed and get bathed, on top of still carrying this entire movement and nobody giving them that credit. And so I think that while it's nice to be, I feel like there's also a flip side to that, because while it's nice to be, it feels good when I go in Google and type in my name and I can pull up a bunch of articles and tell people, like, this is who I am, this is what I do.
Flex then.
But by no means do I want that to be interpreted as we are doing this for the articles.
Right.
Because unfortunately, a lot of the work now that you see people doing is for that headline, that publicity, when the people up here, the people in this room, the people in these spaces are doing this work for the people that come behind us.
That's right.
And I think that is a big part of the putting our bodies on the line. I feel like youth now are in a different place. Hearing everything that our ancestors went through, hearing everything that our parents went through, that our grandparents went through, and then looking around and still seeing, excuse my language, the shit that's happening around us, it's very discouraging. I think our entire existence is depressed. Like I said earlier, before you even know what's going on to you, you see it. Mm-hmm. So while we're growing up, I think it's the entire movement is us getting those questions answered. And unfortunately, a lot of times those questions are not answered. So we have to come up with our own conclusions. And those conclusions suck. They suck. And when you're trying everything that you've seen people try, when you're trying new things that you've seen people try, and you're losing numbers and you're losing youth, and people just seem to be in this place where they're just helpless. And it makes it very hard for us not to be helpless. But I think when we hit the streets, you give it all that you have. I think you give it all that you have. This is all that I am right now. There is no other place that I would rather be than here right now with these people. And I think that kind of gives you a sense of wholeness. Like, if this is what's meant to happen right now, then this is what has to happen right now. Because it's not just about Rekia Boyd, and it's not just about the list of other black men, and more importantly, black women that have been lost. It's eventually this is me. Mm-hmm. Eventually this is me. It doesn't matter the name. It doesn't matter the age. It's me. I see myself in every news article, and every news report, and every statistic. There is no difference. Even doing this work, we are constantly reminded that just because we do this work does not, it doesn't keep us exempt from falling victim to the same fate of the people that we are fighting for. Just a couple months ago, my 9-year-old nephew was shot in his face playing outside. Like, life comes around to humble you. And I think, again, just to quote what Bella just said, we are all so young, having been through so much. It just gets to be this like burning desire in you to thrive. And I think that we will do, or I will do, whatever it takes to get there. And so if that means that I have to plan and fund and post for 1,001 marches or 1,001 teach-ins and do all the free work in the world, then that's what has to happen. If I have to fill the entire Google database with my name and Miracle Boyd's name and Jai Simpson's name and Raina Torres's name and other youth like that, then that's what we're going to have to do. Just to show that this work is not for naught. Our ancestors worked so hard. Our parents worked so hard. Our grandparents worked so hard. And we are going to keep that torch lit. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for sharing the story so personally. I'm sorry about your nephew. You said that I asked a loaded question. I'm going to ask you another one. You ladies show up for your community. You show up for people who you don't even know. How do you want the community to show up for you?
Not that's how you coming with the Q&A. Not that's how you coming with the questions, baby.
How will I like the community to show up for me?
Let us know.
Show up. Just show
I got a couple of answers, but first, I would like the community to show up for themselves. That takes a lot of the work off of my shoulders.
Ooh, wee.
Being so young and being around all of these settings is constantly a lot to take in. Like every day, every hour, every couple of seconds, there's a news article coming in. There's something going on, somebody's cousin, somebody's mama, somebody's brother. Like, and then having to be the ones to reach out to those families and tell them like, oh no, this is not just something you should accept. This is not just normal. You don't have to feel like you feel. And until you can like fully understand and feel comfortable in a space to process your emotions or to get up and do something, I have to feel for you. And I have to go out and tell your story. And a lot of times when you're out telling other people's story, it's hard to acknowledge your own. It's very hard to sit and process everything that you are going through. And just in the past couple of years, and some of my group members can tell you, in the past couple of years, I've lost 2 of my brothers and my grandma and my great uncle. And a lot of my group members didn't know for like months after it happened, because I was just still getting up and doing that work and pushing myself into those spaces, because there was work that needed to be done, and feeling like if I did not, then it would not happen. And so I think it's important that we share the load. It's very depressing and tiring work at times, but as we build community, I think we get to kind of take that burden off of each other. And not just take that burden off of each other, but also pour into each other. So community showing up for me first and foremost looks like community showing up for themselves. I know that we are in these systems and we have this history of trauma, and so that is kind of easier said than done at times. But we have to have that resilience and that drive to keep going. Secondly, I think community looks like Black, queer women being able to hold as much space as they please without having to give this whole like spiel about being Black and queer and a woman first. I think these are the voices and the bodies that are carrying the brunt of all of this. And so to constantly have to sit and unlearn things from people, to constantly have to sit and take disrespect, and to constantly have to sit and take trauma from those same spaces that you are trying to pour into, is too much. It's too much. It's not a place for anybody to thrive. And so eventually that's when you get people getting burnt out, people falling into depression, because the same spaces where you are trying to show love, you do not feel like you are being shown love. But I would say lastly, because I want to keep this real short, I don't want to take up too much time, I think community showing up for me is the continuance of this movement, of this fight. I think there is a lot of unlearning to do. There's a lot of healing to do. There's a lot of resourcing to do. There's a lot of resting to do. There's a lot of just meaningless things that we should be able to just sit back and enjoy. So I think as long as everybody is getting up and taking it one day at a time, even if you did something really small, you work towards something. And so I think as long as everybody is taking it an inch by inch, eventually we'll get that mile and another mile, and now we're at our destination. So yeah, that's what community showing up for me looks like.
What about you, Miss Deborah?
Well, I appreciate you asking that question. In my situation, I was in an area where most of the people were old, were older people, and the younger people that were there had inherited houses from their ancestors, and they really didn't care a whole lot. I can get money for grandma's house. How much can I get? And that's what they want to know. Okay, well, I need you to come to a meeting. Do you have a deed? What can we work with to see what you can get? I don't know what we can work with. So the thing that hurt me, yes, I would love them to show up for themselves. But I was in situations that I wanted them to show up for me too, because I was always so alone. I thank God so much for young people, because the young people that was not really in the affected community was the ones that came and helped me in the first place. They were knowledgeable. They knew how to use computers. They knew all of this. They can text. They can do all of this stuff. And I thank God for young people. They were so much strength to me. some of those people didn't know where their deeds was, didn't know when Big Mama got the house, and none of that. I even seen some situations where Norfolk Southern made sad deals with the people that didn't care about Big Mama's house. Oh, just give me $1,000. I'm gonna get this rock, and they did some of those kind of sellers. Well, that pissed me off with the railroad because they was taking advantage of my people, my area, my space. My people can't show up because you're gonna help cripple their man with some drugs or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So yes, I appreciate your answer. Show up for yourself. But in my case, I wanted somebody to show up for me too. And I thank God for those young people that came forth and help me know how to do things and encourage me and told me that I did a good job. In fact, the young people were a part of my vitamins every day. You know what I'm saying? Because they cared and they were depressed and they got mad. And that helped me. When they got mad, I got strong.
Come on.
So that was my thing. Good question. Good answer.
Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, Miss Deborah was a part of a community that was bought up by a railroad company, and the railroad company came in when the property was at its least value and it was at its most depressed, and began offering the residents settlements to purchase their property at way below what the value was and way below what they would need in order to resettle somewhere. And so she was a part of a battle to make sure that these residents, those that did decide to sell, got at least a settlement that would allow them to purchase and live somewhere else as comfortably. Bella, what about you? How do you want the community to show up for you?
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. My community shows up for me. My community shows up for me. Like, I don't know. I never know how I want somebody to show up for me. I'm the type of person who I don't ask people to show up for me, really. Like, I'm the shower-upper. So I don't even know how to receive help most of the time. I don't even, but it's a blessing that I get it anyway. I get it anyway. How do I want people to show up for me? I want people to understand that I am only here for a matter of time. I want you to know that while I'm here. I know that. Right? We all know that on some level. We only here for a matter of time. Right? So I understand myself as a finite being. Right? But I understand my love is infinite. I understand what I'm fighting for is an infinite fight. So I want people to know that too. Like, I don't know, just love me while I'm here. Just love me while I'm here. And remember what my purpose was. And remember that I lived every single day knowing that purpose. And knowing that it's certain things that I want for this world that I might not see in my lifetime. But that's why I love the people I love. That's why I love y'all the way that I love y'all. That's why I'm a shower-upper. Because I know that you will keep going. Because I know that your space in the world is just as important as mine. show up for blackness, show up for womanhood, show up for queerness, show up for the West Side. Show up for the West Side. Show up for the West Side. Show up for people who are incarcerated. Show up for people who are on drugs. Show up for people who are living with HIV/AIDS. Show up for people who are homeless. Right, like, yeah, I think it goes back to what you said about, like, showing up for yourself, showing up for all the parts of my identity, because I have to show up for all the parts of my identity. And I have to allow every part of my identity to speak truth so that I do not live a lie. So that I do not live a lie. But understanding that because I came into this time space in this vessel, that's why I show up the way that I show up, right? Because of all these identities. And yeah, so showing up for me it's not about showing up for me. It's about showing up for all that I am. And I'm so much bigger than this vessel. Right? This vessel is only here for, God willing, 102 more years. God willing. But blackness will still be here. Mm-hmm. Womanhood will still be here. Queerness will still be here. The West Side will still be here. Chicago will still be here. Right? So show up for that.
Yes, love me while I am here and remember my life's purpose. I'm definitely going to tweet that after this. Let me be the first tonight to thank you ladies for dreaming of Black liberation and for fighting for Black liberation. And with that, I'm going to open it up to the audience. What questions do you have? Don't be shy. Any comments? Someone said you don't have any.
I don't even have a question in the back.
Yeah, y'all said it good.
I think you got a question right there.
A question back here. I have a comment.
Okay.
Hey, Dale.
Share.
Everybody else is hugging, so I was like, I'm just
Hug me later. I'm going to need it still. Okay.
all of you, you guys should definitely tell us your social media handles. I know Bella, you two, I'm new to, but I'm a body that can volunteer, and also for you, I'm a young woman, and where I live at, I'm from the West Side too.
Gang, gang.
Right, West Side gang.
Yeah.
But people like some of us are becoming more educated and we want to do housing and we have no clue how to do it. So if you had contact information, I wouldn't be the only one if you were open to it to reach out to you just for like housing mentorship. Like how do we go about reclaiming the houses our parents lost or just even getting our own property? Because Black people right now, we do need to be re-educated in wealth.
Yeah.
And generational wealth and having things to pass down when we leave. So just y'all connects, and then maybe this audience becoming a new community for y'all today.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's Shay.
Let me learn how to do this now.
Now you know she ain't got no social media. She just said she needed the young people to text for her.
Social media.
Let me stop playing with her.
They
playing.
don't put you on it now, Deborah.
That was years ago.
Okay, period. Don't play with her.
So
what's your social
Yeah, are
media?
you willing to share now, or you want people to come up afterward to get your information, or you want to share now?
Deborah Payne at Facebook.
Okay.
Deborah Payne, Facebook. Payne.
Payne.
Payne. and Deborah with Deborah.
And Facebook is the best way to reach you. And what about you, Taylor?
Okay, I'm gonna give y'all my personal and my group because it would be just completely unjustified for me to sit up here and not plug my group as well. So, personally, if you are a Facebook type of person, even though I don't really do too much of my organizing on Facebook, that's mostly just for memes and kikiing with my cousins. I'm hilarious though, so if you're into that, then my Facebook is Taylor. Taylor is spelled Taylore. Just for you guys, if you didn't know, AF, because I'm just 100% me on there. No respectability politics, no, none of that. On Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at heyo__tayo. That's HEYO__TAYO. Also, beautiful group that I am one of the co-founders of. Just beautiful youth organization that's doing amazing work in this city. Actually, can my youth participants please stand up? Can y'all stand up real quick? Give out some other beautiful youth doing this work in the city. You guys can follow us and all the work that we do, South and West Side. We also have a Baltimore chapter working on a Miami chapter and a chapter in Los Angeles. So y'all can follow us at all social media at GKMC18. You get updates about everything that we're doing, every campaign we have running, every initiative we have running, and you will get to know a little bit more about myself and the other members. So yeah, that's our social media. Thank you. Oh yeah. Also, sorry, yeah. Turn around. It's on the back of my shirt. We official. We're very official. So yeah. We're few and far between, but we do some pretty dope stuff. And we're also working on some housing things. I'm actually over our housing initiative. So if you want to do some, mutual work.
I'm so sorry. I got my little sister with me. Do y'all have an event coming up?
We have, okay, check us out. We actually just came from a peace march. We came from a peace march right before we came here. I'm sorry. I'm gonna let Bella answer in like 2 seconds. But yes, next Saturday, is it Saturday, Mimi? Next Saturday, we will be hosting a back-to-school block party. It will be on 51st and Calumet. There will be book bags, resources, mutual aid. There'll be a bunch of other dope organizations there that you can network with and get some work done. And it'll just be a beautiful space for kids. There'll be food. There'll be gifts. There'll be all types of stuff. So, yeah, that'll be happening next week. Please slide through. Bring the kids. Bring the uncles. Bring the grandmas. Bring all of them. Bring everybody.
Y'all, they putting us out. I'm sorry, y'all.
I would also like to say that you
continue
can
the conversation in the hall. Go ahead, Miss Deborah. Real quick.
They can check me out through thearea.com on Facebook also.
Okay, and Bella, you want to say yours real quick?
Bella Boz. Boz is BAHHS. That's Black Ancestors Here Healing Society, not bars, not prisons, not police. Us, we heal us. Bella Boz, that's everywhere. BellaBoz.com. The website code is fuck. Check it out. Yeah, let's go to the lobby.